Oh yeah, I see myself on Twitch. All right, everybody. Sorry for being late. Technology is apparently not what I work on a day-to-day basis. So welcome to HashiCorp Live. I am so glad to see you all again. I am Tracy. I am a developer advocate here at HashiCorp. Uh, I'll go through what I normally go through. You all know how this works. TLDR, be kind. Let's have fun. Ask all the questions. Be courteous. If you've not read our code of conduct or have ever read our code of conduct, please do that. And I am going to drop a link to that in the chat before we even get started. So let's see here. Now, apparently my chat doesn't want to work. So while I am trying to get my chat to work, I am going to introduce who we are talking to today. So unlike the other HashiCorp lives you may have seen me do, today we're talking to an internal HashiCorp team. So in that vein, you probably won't have as many GitHub repos that you're used to because some stuff you're just not supposed to see. But the stuff that we can share, we will. So while I'm getting my screen set back up because of technology, you two, please introduce yourselves.
Hey everyone, my name is Omar Khwaja, and I'm an engineer on the product delivery team.
Hey, I am Kyle Penpound. I am also an engineer on the product delivery team.
So I imagine, and hello, only dog Taylor. Hi, Taylor. Thanks for jumping in the chat with us. So before we even get into the nitty gritty and the not ready for production part of the cast, let me just ask the question that probably everybody else wants to know. What exactly is the product delivery team?
I can start off with that. So the product delivery team is an internal team to HashiCorp, as you mentioned, and our focus is mostly, a big part of our charter is to reduce the barriers to using our products. It's also to basically just distill like some of the best practices that we learn around the company so that we can infuse that into the products that we're into the packages and modules and things like that that we're creating that users can use. That's the gist of it.
All right, let me see if I can dig a little deeper. So I think you kind of answered this, but like, why should we care? Like, why would I even invite you all to the stream? What do you do that I should be interested about?
So with this one, it's important to remember, like with our tools like Nomad, Console, Vault, they're really flexible tools, and that's a great thing. But for people who are trying to just get started with our tools, sometimes they want like a set of guidelines or like a easy to use module, something easy to just get up and running with. And our focus has been to kind of deliver on that front so that if you are a Vault user and you want to quickly just spin up a Vault cluster in AWS, we're trying to provide the tools that you can use to quickly get up and running. That's kind of why we exist and what our mission is. So hopefully a lot of the work that you see going forward will that'll reflect some of those principles that I'm describing there.
Awesome. Very good answer. Now, that tweet that got sent out had my question, and so I'm going to ask it and see if which one of you will answer it. What in the world is reference architecture? And why do we need it?
Yeah, I can jump on that. So reference architecture in this context is it's a codified description of how an infrastructure should look for running one of our products. And Omar, if you want to dig into like kind of how that plays into the Terraform module side of things.
Definitely. So as I mentioned before, because our tools are super flexible, the reference architecture, as Kyle mentioned, is kind of like it's a set of guidelines for deploying our tools. It doesn't mean you have to abide by that. At the end of the day, you know your environment better than we do. And a reference architecture is sort of a set of guidelines that's not meant to constrain you in any way. Like, we still want you to have the flexibility to use our tools, but it's meant to guide you a little bit. Speaking of reference architectures, I'm going to share my screen here just to give a little shout out to our Learn platform. And it's also an interesting site for any of our users to go to, because the reference architectures that I'm talking about are present on all these categories. So if you want to see one for, Vault with integrated storage, it's there. You can also see one for Vault with console as storage backend. And we got the same ones for like Nomad. We got them for console as well. And what a reference architecture is, I mean, it can go into a lot of details for like, one aspect could be like, well, I got these Vault nodes. How do I distribute them across availability zones? But it also goes into details like, what should my instance sizes be? Like, how big should my EC2 instances be? What do I need to have open as far as my security groups go? What kind of health checks should I be setting up with, the load balancers that I'm setting up with my products? And an interesting, let's see, I'm just trying to share my screen here. I want to take a look at one of them together, just so we kind of have a sense of what you're looking at when you go through a reference architecture. So this one's for Vault, and you're seeing stuff like, failure tolerance. You're looking at how you should handle availability zones. You get into sizing for Vault servers. And what I like about these reference architectures is sometimes they even discuss, like, if you're not able to follow what we're recommending, what's like the best case you can do. So like in this case, you have like, what does it mean if you're only deploying Vault into one availability zone? What does it mean if you're deploying into two availability zones? So there's everything from like a high level understanding of how you should set up, our products with regard to like broad, just a broad view of the infrastructure. But we also get into like a little more details as to like, what kind of, disks should you have with your EC2 instance, things like that. So hopefully that gives a, broad overview of what a reference architecture is and why you should care.
It does. And so for those of you that are used to seeing me, I don't hide away from the fact that there are things that I do not know and that I am still learning. That question was an actual one that I needed answered, because reference architecture is something that I'm looking at wanting to help out with like the boundary team. And so I need to kind of get an idea of what I'm supposed to do. Now, Rosemary she's not asking for a friend. She's asking for herself. She wanted to know, are reference architectures secure by default? And I'm in general, just are these reference architectures secure by default? She's asking for her, not a friend.
Yeah, typically when we set up a reference architecture, it is something that is meant to be run in a production environment. So there's a lot of different ways where that might fit into someone else's stack, but it's one prescriptive way of running a thing in production.
Awesome. Those are all my questions for right now. I have one, but I'm going to wait and spring it on you later on. So do you want to get started with what you wanted to go over?
Yeah. So we're talking about reference architectures, and that's kind of like an abstract concept. What I kind of want to highlight on our team is what we've been working on are like Terraform starter modules. And the point of these modules is to encapsulate, well, the ideal is to encapsulate the reference architectures so that when you're using our modules to quickly get up and running, you're also kind of getting some of the best practices baked into them. We're still iterating on the modules. They're not perfect, but our goal is to, we've already put them out, but our goal is to iterate on those and incorporate more and more of the principles of, the reference architecture for each of the products. And we have most of those kind of built into the modules already. So if you take a look at, and while we're talking about modules, I guess I should point out the Terraform Registry, because if you're interested into where you can see these modules and use them, that's where you would look. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you what the Terraform Registry looks like. It's if you haven't been there, you just go to registry.terraform.io. And if you're there, you can kind of just start off in the search bar by just typing in like HashiCorp starter, and you should see some of our starter modules that are present. So you'll see that we have them there for Vault, Nomad, and Console. A little later today, I'll show a little demo of the Vault module, what it looks like, and I'll discuss a few more things about it. But you'll see if you like click on the Vault starter module, it'll take you to this, and you have some pretty clear-cut instructions on how to just get started with it. We've tried our best to default whatever we think is a reasonable default, so that as a user, when you pull in this module and try to use it, you're not in a situation where you're trying to fill out like 15 different pieces of information. We've tried to default what we can to a reasonable limit, but there are a few values that you need to fill in. Like in this case, it would be like allowed inbound CIDRs. So if you're setting up this module, what traffic should be able to interact with this cluster, with a few other basic things that we can't really supply for you, like a key to be able to SSH into the instances. And then there's some other things like a name prefix that'll just identify the cluster that you've set up. But this is sort of what I wanted to draw some attention to as well. So if you go to the Terraform Registry and you see these modules and you start playing around with them, you'll see that it's pretty minimal setup that you need to just get up and running with a cluster. So like you might be on Learn, going through some guides and tutorials on how to, use Vault or Console or Nomad. But when you're ready to like set up your cluster, run something in like, let's say AWS, and you want, a few Vault nodes communicating with each other, this would be a great place to start. So that hopefully that's kind of like an overview of where, what the registry is, what we have on the registry as far as what you can use, and how that all kind of ties back into the reference architecture that we're talking about. So like for the Vault one, you'll see if you spin it up by default, we follow a principle in the reference architecture of having 5 nodes, and those are spread across different availability zones. So as you go through the module, you'll see that we've kind of baked in some of that stuff for you.
Nice. And I will add a link specifically to the Vault module in the chat. And before you start, I asked Patty what a good one-liner was for what the difference between a plugin and a module was, because I always forget because I don't really use them as probably as much as I should. And I got plugins are meant to give Terraform new capabilities. Modules are meant to package up the capabilities Terraform already has to make them easier to use. And that was better than I think all 3 of us were coming up with the other day. So I'll take it. So while you get started, I'll add a link to that Vault starter module in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think the next thing here is, Kyle, if you didn't have anything you wanted to add on to the plugins or provider reference that Tracy just mentioned, I do have a Vault cluster that I can kind of show that has been set up. And we could talk about a few different things about it that you would also find out if you were reading the reference architecture for Vault in this case. Specifically, in this case, we're using Vault with integrated storage. So let me share my screen here. I'm going to share my terminal here and just hopefully everyone can see that. So in this case, I've used the Vault starter module that I was showing previously. And this is Vault using integrated storage. Vault can be set up in 2 different scenarios. You can use Vault with Console as a storage backend, which we have a reference architecture for. And Vault can also be set up using integrated storage, which we also have a reference architecture for. So if you go to learn.hashicorp.com, click on there, you'll see that we have these reference architectures available. In this case, we have 5 Vault nodes, as you'll see. when I'm listing the peers here. And these 5 Vault nodes are spread across different availability zones. And the main thing here is, this was pretty easy to set up. It's just a main.tf file with a few variables that you filled in, as the Terraform registry kind of showed you in the README when I was screen sharing that. And in this case, there's an interesting thing that we did for this one, and I think it's interesting to talk about as far as like what kind of work we want to do in the future. So in this case, there's something you have to understand about Vault. It's that in this case, when you're using integrated storage, you're dealing with Raft. And unlike Nomad and Console, where they have something called dead server cleanup, so that if a server leaves the cluster, it'll actually be cleaned up from the Raft configuration. Vault, as of right now, doesn't have that dead server cleanup. This is mentioned in the documentation as well. So like, for example, you have a 5-node Vault cluster and one instance gets terminated. You definitely want to go into the cluster and clear that. Like, there's a remove peer command that you can use to clear that node from the Raft config. And then you can go ahead and join a new node to that cluster. Similarly, like if you lose like 2 nodes, which you're able to do with a 5-node cluster, like a 5-node cluster tolerates the loss of 2 nodes. If you lose 2 nodes, you want to make sure that you go in and you clear those 2 nodes with the remove peer command before you add 2 new nodes. If you don't, there's some wacky things that can happen. It messes up the Raft config, cluster can become non-operational. So in this case, I have this Vault cluster set up using auto-scaling groups, an auto-scaling group. And you might wonder what happens when one of the nodes gets terminated. In this case, the auto-scaling group would bring up a new node, and you might wonder, well, where in that whole life cycle did you remove the node that just got terminated? And in this Vault starter module, we have some logic built in where basically the auto scaling group has like a lifecycle hook, so that when a node dies, CloudWatch will see that and trigger a Lambda function, and the Lambda function will actually remove the node before a new node is spun up in the auto scaling group. But I thought that was just an interesting thing to mention here, and I'll go ahead and do something here. As you'll see, this leader node, I'm going to go ahead and clear that up, or I'm going to actually terminate that node from the cluster. So give me a second while I do that. We'll make a note of that. That's the one that ends in 934.
Okay.
And just while you're doing that, I can say a few words, Omar, just to kind of tie together what we talked about before with the reference architectures. This architecture is intended to be, like you said, a starter module. So it gets you off the ground without needing to be an expert in Vault or how any of these things work. So if you want to try out Vault or POC it or deploy it to production in like a greenfield account in AWS, all you need to do is import the module and give it a few super basic inputs. You don't have to be like an expert Vault admin just to get going. So that's kind of the intent with this reference architecture, is to get you off the ground without knowing about Vault, so you can actually get your hands on it.
And it's funny enough that you picked that for your example, because on Tuesday, our office hours are Raft focused Vault office hours. So if anybody is not quite clear on what we're doing by the time we get to the end, pop over to YouTube on Tuesday, and I'll be there with you, also learning about how the rest of this stuff works on the background.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of say that, like with that previous example, kind of getting into the weeds, but what you got to kind of remember is that this is built in to the starter module, so it's not something you would worry about. And our objective is to basically, when we do these type of things, reflect, build in some functionality to the module, reflect some of those principles of the reference architecture. We're trying to achieve that across the modules that we have for the different clouds, so that whether you're using AWS or whether you're using Azure or GCP, you should have the same experience and everything should work the same way. And Yeah, that's kind of the basic idea. So the demo I was just showing, it'll take a minute or two while the node terminates and while it comes back up, so I can display that functionality. But happy to talk about any other topic in the
I
meeting.
have one for Kyle that was in the chat
Yes.
because someone wanted to know what we asked actually before the meeting, and that is what is going on with the astronaut pup in the background.
So that's Ollie, the intern here on product delivery. You might think that this is my home office with a nice picture of my dog on the wall, but this is actually the dog's office. He's just letting me use it.
Nice. Let's see. Oh, Rosemary, I believe, wanted to know, do the reference architecture modules include the deployments to Kubernetes?
Um, the modules that we have currently right now aren't don't include anything deploying to Kubernetes. Right now, we just have our product set up on actual virtual machines.
Okay. Oh, hey, a familiar name. All right, here we go. DevOps Adil. Is the Lambda function created as a part of the module?
Yes, it's created as part of the module. It's set up and configured with the cluster as part of the module. It's not even something you have to think about. It's just there to give you that functionality so that you have this running in an auto scaling group.
You all bought filthy starter modules with Tracy in mind is how I feel about this, and I'm very thankful. You're welcome for the increased font size. We made sure to test so you wouldn't fuss at us when we got on the live stream. Let's see. Java Grunt wants to know, can I run Vault on my Raspberry Pi cluster?
Not with these modules, but that might be a good future stream, maybe.
Rosemary, write that down. Let's see. Oh, I think you already answered this one. And yeah, Chloe, you knocked that one out the park. Thank you so very much. And hello, Jono. All right, let's see. Are we ready yet? All I know is that I have 934 in the back of my head as to what you were removing.
Oh yeah, let's get back to that. So just as a quick demonstration, at one point I terminated the node that ends in 934. And as you can see, in my latest list Pierce command, we have 5 nodes again, and 934 is gone. So the new node that came up actually successfully joined the cluster again, and that happened after the old node was removed. So that was kind of just a small demo of, just one aspect of the Vault cluster. Now, once you have this Vault cluster up using the starter module, you can use it for whatever you like. Vault is, has lots of engines that you can use, but this was just a small demo as to the reliability of the Vault cluster that you have in the auto scaling group. So
you mentioned, I'm going to go back to some of the other questions because I have questions that I add in a doc so I don't forget for all of our lovely viewers. You mentioned, well, before I get to that, what were the challenges you had to think through or work through in, I guess, even in just the creation of the module or even in the scenario that you just walked through?
Cal, do you want to start us off with that one? I have a few thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, at a more meta level, one of the challenges is going from the idea that there is no one true way to run Vault and going from that to saying, here's a prescriptive way to get you started. There's all kinds of challenges with agreeing upon a style and what that starter thing actually looks like. And then beyond that, like we kind of touched on security earlier, but making sure that that starter is not only easy to use, but secure. And then for Vault specifically, I think Omar probably has some great points.
Definitely. First, from an overall perspective, the challenges are kind of like taking the reference architecture and distilling it into the modules, kind of making the decision as to how to structure the module. What type of variables and aspects do we want to expose to the users? What do we want to default? So those are things we got to think through with the practitioner in mind. And then there's like module specific challenges with each product. So in this case, we've been focusing on Vault, but one of the challenges we had there was with the autoscaling group that we described, because the other two products here, Nomad and Console, actually kind of do the dead server cleanup, but in this case, Vault didn't. So that was kind of a challenge to work around. And that's something important, because when we solve an issue in one platform, we want to make sure that we're achieving parity with the other modules that we put out as well. So that's something for us as a team to kind of think about as well and reflect on, because we want to make sure that if you're expecting a certain behavior in one platform, that you're going to get that in the other platforms as well when you use more of our modules. So, and like thinking about that's also an interesting challenge. Like, how do we make sure that we're doing that?
Awesome. And then something you mentioned when we were talking about this live stream, the both of you pointed out, was that the Vault module uses integrated storage, and that's probably pretty different than what people usually do in that instance. So like, how did you all get the autoscaling group to work with integrated storage?
So yeah, integrated storage is relatively new compared to how people have been using Vault, which is using console as a storage backend. So traditionally, I think Vault has just been it's been console clients, and you have a console cluster set up. In this case, because it's just Vault and you're not relying on any other product, there was that one aspect of dead server cleanup that I mentioned. That Vault didn't have. So when I kind of noticed that, and as a team, when we noticed that, we figured, well, what can we do to, what can we do to make it easier for Vault to be run in an auto scaling group, so that if you're wanting to use the starter module and you want to use something with like an ASG to make it more reliable in case a node dies, like how can we do that? So that's some of the logic that we worked into this module. But that's the overall view. Like, happy to go into more details about the weeds and plumbing of it, but that's the overall picture.
Got anything to add to that one, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, to expand on the inevitable like follow-up question to that, like why not just use the console backend? I think the starter modules are really trying to focus on like the minimum viable deployment for like how can you run Vault without worrying about all these interconnected things that might exist in more complicated architectures. So this particular reference architecture is trying to keep it as slim as possible. So that integrated backend storage was definitely a huge win in that case.
Awesome. Oh, we have extra questions. All right, let me scroll back up. Rosemary would like to know, what is the approximate cost to run the starter modules? I know it depends on the cloud provider, but wondering if I should be careful when I run them.
By default, they will, I have to check what the default is. I think it might be a T2 medium, but the cost will depend on what type of EC2 instances you're using. So you might be able to get away with running it with T2 micros if you're not really deploying anything heavy on the Vault cluster, in which case, if you deploy like a few T2 micros, it might be at most, I'm not sure what the estimate, but maybe $1 or $2 something if you're just deploying it for like an hour. If you're running with a T2 large or some other big instance and you're running it continuously for days, then yeah, the cost could add up. But in most cases, if you just change the instance size, if you're concerned about that, and you just spin it up to test it out, you probably wouldn't run up more than a couple of cents if you're just spinning it up for half an hour just to play with it. Of course, if you want to keep it up and you want to keep it up with beefy instances, the cost would add up there.
And it adds up without you even thinking about it. That's why we always push on Terraform Destroy. People don't
exactly.
like to play. Let's see. That was a good question, Rosemary. Thank you. Let's see, Taylor. Are there any plans to make a HashiCorp developer stack that would allow for you to run this locally while you develop? For example, Docker Compose or similar. Chloe, if you can answer that one, I'll send you coffee. That seems like a very Chloe question. So
Right.
Taylor, that was tricky. We're going to come back to that one. Let's see. Oh, there's a suggestion that docs.chef.io inspect resources should be, let's see. Oh, someone's suggesting you should add the inspect tests with the modules repo. So I will take a screenshot of that and add it in that Slack channel so we can follow up and they can discuss internally about that. Thank you for that suggestion. What else do we have? Oh, thanks, Chloe. So Taylor, Chloe's going to answer your question about the HashiCorp developer stack. Let's see. Oh, I've got a back channel request from someone in the company that wants to know, since you have the wonderful array of tabs open, might there be a chance that you could show a little bit of the code of the modules that handles the integrated storage? And if you can't, they understand.
Oh, absolutely. So let's go here. And just for everyone watching, when you go to the Terraform registry and you click on any of the Vault starter, any of the starter modules, you'll actually see the source code right here, leading to GitHub. So you are welcome to check it out. I mean, it's all public and you can see what you're running. In this case, a few things that I would show, like there's a lot of things to talk about in this code, but a few things that I could point out is if you are interested in seeing where the Lambda function was for removing the peer that we talked about, it's nested inside the module. If you go through, you'll see there's the Lambda function part and the remove peer handlers there. There's a few other places you can look for some interesting things. Right now, we have a flat structure in the module. This is probably something that, as we go on, we'll iterate on and improve. So a lot of these things that you see organizational wise will be moved into submodules. But if you take a look at the GitHub code and you look at the module code, you'll see that pretty much everything's kind of organized right now by file. So if you want to look at what's going on with the Lambda functions, you can do that. If you want to see how the ASG is set up, you can do that as well, what images we're using. And yep, that's the GitHub code. And again, that's accessible through the registry. So if you go to any of the modules, you'll see that the source code link is there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. Oh man, back channel has just decided to blow up. Let me see what else we have. Module. Oh, now this is one I should have known to ask. I apologize, person in the back channel. Module development patterns. How do you decide to mark some things as sensitive, or how do you deal with a large number of input variables for each, anything around those kinds of things?
So I think around sensitive, it's mostly just kind of a gut check. We do work with security on these modules to have them pass through it, and they give us their opinions as well as run a bunch of scans on things. So that helps us a lot, kind of validate our gut checks.
Let's see. What else do I have? Oh, did the modules have to be upgraded for 0.12, 13, or 14? And did you have problems during that upgrade? I kind of want to know that one.
I think at the time we were writing the modules, I think we were on 0.13 at the time. I'm not sure, I can't remember if we had to transition from 0.12 to 0.13, but I think right around the time 0.13 was released, we had started writing the modules. So everything should work from that point on.
Yeah, and I can say for the modules that we've been working on most recently, switching from 13 to 14 didn't give us any issues that I can recall.
Before I ask another question, yeah, I think, all right, Kyle, I'll let you handle that one in the back channel then. Hold on. So, Packer is not HCL, boo. Check back in about a month or two and I might be able to give you some information on that one. Let's see. What else do we have? Haha, okay, we should, oh, that's just rude. Any tips or considerations around module versioning? This one is for either of you.
Yeah, our modules are versioned. So, um, is there? I'm sorry. Is there a more specific question around that?
Mostly just, are there any tips or tricks around module versioning?
I think as like at a baseline, I would say when the module is implemented, definitely lock it to whatever tag you're testing with, because we do move forward with vault versions and other things as we're testing, but we don't necessarily go too deep into testing previous versions.
Oh, and then like for the Vault module and for the Vault module, do keep in mind Vault had integrated storage with starting with 1.5. So like you wouldn't use this Vault module, which is with integrated storage, for any previous versions of Vault, which because you're allowed to select, and we might build in some validation or error checking in there so that you're not able to use previous versions, but that would be something to keep in mind since integrated storage came out with 1.5.
Okay. And let's see. Oh, Chloe had a really nice answer to Taylor's question about the HashiCorp developer stack. For those of you that cannot currently see the chat, our upcoming work is currently devoted to getting things to an easy on-ramp across the cloud, so AWS, Azure, GCP. For the time being, if you're in a Mac dev environment, we recommend using our Homebrew tap, and there's a link to that in there, and I can actually paste that command down a little bit further. Or if you're on in a Linux environment, you can use either the Yum or Debian packages. Now, for those of you that might push back like I did internally and went, but what about Linux Brew? That's available now. Kyle, you're the one. Um, they are aware, the team is aware, and it is on a list. I need to remind you, this is a very long list, but they are aware. So I believe if you are interested in Linux Brew, if you go search that repo, thumbs up some stuff.
There's a pinned issue, yeah.
Yeah, there may be a
I,
pinned issue about said subject that I think, yes, Kyle, because you replied to me with said pinned issue. What does that pinned issue say?
yeah, so I will say that going forward with the Homebrew tap, supporting the new Mac chips requires some reworking of things. And I think the nature of those reworks will bring the possibility of having Linux binaries on the Homebrew tab.
You're making Linux people say thank you to Darwin and Mac. Are you serious? Are you trying to start a war? What are you doing?
Also, the Linux packages are great, and I fully endorse those.
Thank you, because that's what I use on WSL right now. Awesome. Let's see. Will you start developing modules for Vault services using the Vault Terraform provider? Is one of the questions in the chat.
I'm not sure. A module for Vault services?
Yeah, the question is, will you start developing modules for Vault services using the Vault Terraform provider? Like Vault, PKI, GCP, AWS, Azure, Secrets Backend. What's the follow-up? Sorry, I missed the other part of that.
Oh, so like providers for like enabling the different engines in Vault.
That's what I'm getting from that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's something we would do because that's a very product specific need, like which engine you need for Vault. Like, you know, Vault has like dozens of engines, like the TLS engine, and you know, so I'm not sure if that's something we would get into that granular level of setup because what we're trying to do is give you the infrastructure, and then if you need a specific engine configured in Vault, that's something you would kind of configure for yourself, since it's very specific. So that's just kind of my gut reaction to that.
Okay.
I would say, like, as a blanket statement, if a reference architecture that our team's building involves some sort of Vault services as a part of the architecture, then absolutely.
Okay. And what I'll do, okay, thanks. So they provided an example. I'm going to put that in our Slack channel just so you can get an idea of what they're talking about. And if you can't address it today, at least you'll know kind of what was going on. They pasted their repo for Terraform Vault Secrets GCP. So I've got that in there. Okay, so here's the one I was saying was rude earlier. So do you run automated tests against the starter modules?
That is something we're going to iterate on and get some automated testing on. Right now, our testing situation is not where we want it to be, but we're definitely focusing on that, and that's what we want to incorporate.
And I will say, as a pushback to the person that asked that question, Rosemary is very good and interested in testing. So if you need any assistance or have any questions, feel free to follow up with her. Let's see, what else do we have? The follow-up to that was, what were the challenges with the testing situation? Which is a really good follow-up. Thank you, Rosemary.
I think as a whole, there's kind of a higher level push towards automated tests. So I know we have a lot of internal groups working on those kinds of integration tests with products like that. Within the Linux packages that are being built, we do have tests that run on those, but there's a bigger picture scope of taking a step back and figure out how we do that across the board.
Rosemary, you got to call out. Contributions welcome. Let's see. What else? What other questions did I have earlier? I think that hit most of my questions. And I want to say you've already gone over this a little bit when you were showing the code structure, but like, how are your modules currently structured? And is that a normal structure for modules? Basically, is what you're doing normal? Or did you have to tweak things a little bit?
What we're doing is normal when you start off with writing a module. As a module grows and you start adding more functionality to it, typically you start organizing the code at a more sub-module level. So like when you have a load balancer and you have some other components to your architecture, you start dividing those into sub-modules that can then be swapped out if needed. Right now, with these starter modules, there's something we need to iterate on, and we'll probably get to that. But if you go through the starter modules right now, you'll see it's more of a flatter structure, still well organized. You can kind of find everything you need. But I think one of our plans is to definitely organize that a bit more and start modularizing that a bit more so that you can kind of, if you need a piece of infrastructure, you can get it from that submodule. If you don't want to use it from that submodule, you don't have to, in case you want to swap out something. But yeah, when you're starting off with Terraform modules, typically everything's kind of flat. But as you start growing and organizing things a bit better, it becomes a little more modular. So that's where we're kind of at right now with the starter modules.
I think as our teams worked on more modules like this, we've learned a lot about kind of what's best to interact with and what's more approachable from a code standpoint. And so those iterations are from those lessons we've learned over multiple projects.
Yeah, thanks for answering that one. Like I said at the beginning, I think I have a repeat customer viewer slash on here that was starting a Terraform module. I'm getting into modules, and like I said, reference architecture at the beginning, that's like new to me. And so I'm just jumped head first this past week. But also Jono actually posted and said he got some really great examples just from reading through the files on how to structure. So thanks for making things clear. And thanks for giving us some background on that. Let me see if anybody else has any questions. I might need clarification for this one, but one in the chat says, how close is this module from HCP Vault? Oh, that's the HCP side of me. I can't answer that one. Oh, you take it. Do you all have an answer for that one?
I'm not sure what that architecture looks like, but I know that it runs Vault and this module does too. So the output is we'll get you Vault for both sides. But yeah, I'm not sure what the cloud architecture looks like for that.
Okay. You keep asking good questions in this chat. Thank you. I need you to know how many screenshots I've taken and actually popped in the Slack from this. Let's see. Let me see if I had any extra questions. I do have one more question, and this one might actually get us close to the close because it might be a long answer. And in our defense for this question, it should be obvious, but I want to ask it anyway. Why in the world does it take 45 minutes to delete?
Oh, you might be you might be referring to the Vault module, and that is it's using Lambda functions that are can communicate with private subnets that Vault instances are in, and the delay that you're experiencing there's a page, and I'll have to link it to it. We can link it, but the delay is actually on the AWS side. I forgot the exact detail there, but there is something with using Lambda functions in a VPC that causes some type of delay when deleting. I think we've brought the issue up with AWS in the past, but I don't have too much detail there. But it's definitely something with the pieces that we're using in AWS, and the delay is on the AWS side. So there's nothing we can actually speed up from our side. Last time I checked, I think AWS is working on it so that there's not a 45-minute time period to delete. And it's not in every region, I think. It's like in certain regions. So that's kind of where that is. So unfortunately, that's out of our hands, but hopefully AWS will resolve that issue soon.
I'm going to pop a link into chat. Let me know if that's into the Slack, and let me know if that's the right one. I think I found it, but I'm not sure.
I think it was linked on the registry module, if that's the one.
Oh, okay. All right, let me go back and look at that.
Yeah, I can say as a team that runs a lot of Terraform applies and destroys, we are often at the mercy of the cloud provider APIs.
Viewers, please remember that across the entire side of Terraform. If it's a provider or a module and it's talking to somebody else and it's not from us, it's on them. It's kind of like our version of it's always DNS.
We do have that, just quickly, I'll point out, we do have it documented in the Terraform documentation as well. So like I'll share it here. But if you look at the AWS Lambda function resource, we do have a note there. So I thought I'd throw that in there just for some extra context. So.
All right. Well, we're pretty close to the top. Oh, wait a minute. No, there's more. I like my back channel. My back channel is active. All right. Let's see. Okay. And Chloe also placed into Twitch chat that this is one of those flaky API style problems. So again, it has been noted, but kind of like blaming Amazon when FedEx doesn't deliver on time on that one. Let's see. Console has a lot of secure configurations like verify incoming or gossip encryption. Did you run into any challenges trying to find the right combinations of configurations to run the clients and the servers?
I think we ran into some issues with that as far as just like getting the configuration right. I'm not sure that we have the configuration perfect right now, but it's something we're gonna probably go back and iterate on as well. But I don't remember like the specific issues there.
Yeah, what I remember from setting up those console configurations, we had to do a lot of ninja work around letting the nodes that are coming up determine whether we're creating a console cluster, whether we're joining one, that kind of thing. So that I can't remember specifically, but there might be some special logic in there for things like that.
And then I still have one more. Start putting my Slack in the front. How did you verify that the IAM policies in the modules are least privilege?
That's sort of just us combing through it, getting feedback from others as well. And if we ever come across something that needs to be tightened a bit more, that's definitely something we'll do, because the goal is to have least privileged profiles and permissions.
Yeah, and for things like that too, all of these modules are open source GitHub repos. So if there's any Anything around that is out of line, then PRs or issues are open. Which I may regret pitching that right now, but have fun over.
Oh, that's so
No, but seriously, we do welcome PRs. Depending on what the PR is, it might need to be considered whether that fits into what we're trying to do with the module. But yeah.
Just for my knowledge, and I guess for the viewers, is the thumbs up the best way to indicate interest in your repo? So if there's an issue and a request or a feature or however we want to word it for you all, if we see something we want, do we just need a thumbs up?
I think that, and as well, just kind of expanding on what Omar just mentioned too, since these modules are modeled after specific reference architectures, if the changes that we're discussing don't line up with that, then it might be more of a case of like we should have another architecture that meets these other needs and another module for those.
Okay, awesome. And yes, Chloe reiterates, we really, really, truly, contributions are welcome. We love open source. So yes, please go help. And oh, I haven't said it today. Documentation counts. I want to put that out there. Okay, so we are 5 minutes away from wrapping up. Did either of this is fun? I need to ask you all to come back again. Do you all have anything else that you'd like to throw out there or let us know about that may be coming that you can let us know about, or anything specific that you need some PRs on that people want to help out with?
As far as anything specific coming out, I don't have any spicy takes there. Maybe Kyle does. But as far as other things, yeah, as a team, we would appreciate. We always appreciate if you go through our modules. Anything that you have, any questions or concerns, issues, we love hearing back from the community. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like don't be afraid to ask for something different than what we're offering, because that's just as valuable to say like this architecture doesn't meet the needs for so many people, so we need something else. And also thanks for the stream, because I think we had a lot of questions that maybe we didn't anticipate, so that was awesome.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do, let's see. Chloe says, keep an eye on the registry. We're going to do a lot this year with starters. So just keep an eye out. And
yes.
Also, they do listen. And plus, I actually like this entire team. I can't say that for every team at HashiCorp. I absolutely love this particular team. They are nice. They are really, really nice. I am going to pop in the chat. I can't remember if I did it at the, and also the team is hiring. PS, the team is hiring. I can't remember if I did this at the beginning of the stream. So I am going to pop a link in again, or maybe for the first time, the Learn tutorial on module creation, the patterns. I've already added a link to our Learn guides in general, and there are a ton of them. And I personally know there will probably be some more in the next couple of months, few months or so on like Boundary and Packer. I'm going to try to get something out for Packer myself. And then we also have a link to one of the job postings on the job site, but from there, you should be able to backtrack and access anything else this particular team might have available. And last but not least, I'm going to pop a link in the chat to our community office hours. Like I said, we have a Raft focused Vault office hours coming up on Tuesday. So if any of the Raft or Vault terminology or processes in this particular live stream kind of went a little over your head and skimmed off the top, kind of like mine, well, in my case, trimmed some off the bottom, jump on Tuesday so we can find out what's going on. And I think that's either Rob and or Rosemary for that one. So it is sure to be fun. This is a link to the community office hours. That's hashicorp.com/community. And do either of you fine, wonderful people have anything else to say before we end this particular live stream? I have really enjoyed you.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for watching. And it's always fun interacting with the community. So thank you.
Awesome. Oh,
yeah,
wait.
thanks so much. Okay, and if you like writing Terraform, definitely check out that job posting. It's a great team, and we write Terraform.
Funnily enough, Apologies. I think that might actually be, oh no, we have 3 community office hours next week. Vault is on Tuesday and Console and Terraform are on Thursday. I apologize. And we will hear from this team again next month. But that will be on the office hour, so you can grab some more questions you might have that you couldn't think of today. Now I'm officially through. So see you all next time. And I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.